Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else.
Welcome everyone to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, the podcast that helps you understand your career through the insights and inspiration from some of Australia's most interesting business leaders. Today, we're meeting Laura Johnson, a CMO, CEO, founder, entrepreneur, and published author. This will take a little bit unpacking. Welcome, Laura, wearer of many hats. How are you?
Good, thanks. What an intro. Thanks.
That's all right. It's true. You wear a lot of hats and do lots of things. So we've got loads to talk about. Actually, probably within that, I don't know, advisor, mentor, there's loads in that. And the recent book, Women in Leadership, is the thing that put you on my radar. And we're, as a passionate personal believer, as a business at AXR, we have a huge interest in the impact women have in a leadership team and on a business. So I want to spend a good chunk of today's pod really understanding how and why and on what the book's all about. But we will explore your career because it is a careers podcast. So let's get into that first. Our favorite icebreaker, we're going to go back to this one. What's your favorite brand? And as a marketer, you've worked on loads of brands, so you can't pick one of your own.
I was thinking about this before. Actually, I always had a brand crush on Mulberry. Just like, and maybe that's just very British, but I feel like as a teenager, it was just one of those really iconic British brands it's just lasted through the ages that I still think it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the one. And I've never worked in consumer, so it's definitely, nothing that I've kind of experienced in my career, but yeah, just love Mulberry.
And do you own any Mulberry?
I do.
Yeah. So it's a crush that's come to life.
Yeah.
Excellent. You probably need it today. And secondly, where are you from? Well, give me a sense of before you kind of debuted on LinkedIn, as it were. So the previous life.
I had one of those LinkedIn anniversaries the other day that said, this is 15 years. And I was like, I've never felt so old. 15 years on LinkedIn. So I grew up in Norfolk in the UK, then moved to Jersey for a few years, back to London, then went traveling and didn't get much further than Australia, as many Brits will tell you, unfortunately.
Yeah. So moved around a little bit then.
Yeah. Always wanted to travel. Always wanted to live in different places.
Yeah.
So,
was that you or was that family?
Me. I don't know why. Everyone else is still at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just one of those things. I think once you've done it once, you kind of think, it's all right. I can do that again.
Yeah.
So I think it gets easier the more you move.
So where do you go? If you go back to the UK, where do you go back to now?
Back to Norfolk, yeah. Mum and Dad are still there.
Still Norfolk, yeah. Oh, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. It's I always say I go back for about 48 hours. I'm like, I'm going to move home. And then you realise just how small it is. And you're like, no, actually,
yeah.
I'm going to head back.
Yeah. It also depends on the weather you get, I think.
Yeah, very dependent on the weather.
Good. So your career, when I was reviewing it, you have done lots. So let's try and summarize the career journey. It's a question we often ask candidates actually in interviews, so it feels a bit interview, sorry.
But no pressure.
Yeah. But in kind of 5 minutes, can I take us from the beginning to where we are now? And then we're going to explore lots of that, but just give you your summary.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2009, so terrible time for graduates at GFC, yeah. And I got a marketing placement. So I did management and marketing at uni, got a marketing placement in Jersey for 3 months. And honestly, I was just so grateful to have a job. I didn't really care where it was. So I thought, and also it's not a bad place to be for the summer. Beautiful. So I went for 3 months, ended up staying for 5 years. Worked in a B2B tech company, essentially. I still don't really understand what we did, lots of hardware, and I'm sure it's moved on since then. But it was one of those kind of real baptisms of fire. But the managing director from there moved over to Jersey Post, and they had a digital transformation project on at the time. So this is now showing my age. It was about getting the post office online because they didn't have websites.
Wow.
Or they didn't have transactional websites. So I went and did that, and then had that real mid-20s, Jersey's a small place. I think I'm going to move to London. Moved to London for another kind of B2B consultancy, kind of really stuck with the B2B side of things. and just really didn't love living in London. I think the Northern Line every day after living in the beach in Jersey was just a little bit dull. Love London, wasn't fun to live. And that's when I thought, you know what, I'm going to go traveling. Got to Australia, ended up working for a startup, B2B tech again. And we went very quickly from 10 people to 100. Marketing went from me to about a team of 15.
What was the company?
XREF.
XREF, oh yeah, Yep.
Yeah, so one of the first guys on the ground there. So that was a lot of fun, and then kind of got really addicted to that whole startup. Like, can we do that? Can we grow 200% a year? Let's just keep doing that. Ended up at another startup after that, completely different experience. Product wasn't great, money wasn't there. Made myself redundant, restructured the team, and then COVID happened. So I had this like big plan of 3 months off work. It's going to be great. And then ended up like staring at my housemate, just being like, so what should we do today? And that's how I stumbled across Antler. And someone said, why don't you do the Antler program? It's 10 weeks. You get to spend time with 100 people. Just go and hang out with some smart people and see what happens. And that's where Strivin became, from like an idea to a business. And that's been the last 3 years. Part-time. So I've been doing kind of fractional CMO work for a few different HR tech companies, but also recruitment agencies, just really staying in that future of workspace whilst building Strivin, but full-time now as of March, which is a bit scary, but good. It's good fun.
Great. We'll get into Strivin in a moment, but so lots in there. XREF I know well, and you've kind of touched that recruitment world quite a bit as you've gone on, or the people space again. But is there kind of, when you reflect back on what you've done so far, anything that's passed you by? Anything you thought, I said no and I should have done it, because we all have those moments in life where you make the best decision you can at the moment and in time.
I don't think so. Do you know what? I've always been very good at saying yes, which is probably why I've ended up in different places.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of those like, say yes and work it out later. I think there were definitely times in my career where I wish I'd tried agency side instead of just being in-house. But I feel like most opportunities have kind of come to me. And I don't mean that in sort of an arrogant way. I think it's just because I do say yes when people talk to me about things. I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll give that a go. So yeah, no, I don't think so. I think I've been pretty lucky.
I think it's a good positive mindset though, to kind of look at something for what it can be as opposed to the reasons not to do it.
Yeah, but I think you have to when you have your own business, right? I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah.
You're constantly finding the silver lining.
Yeah, exactly. Relentless optimism.
Exactly.
It'll work out.
Right? We'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So one of the threads that you said is, if you look at your careers, kind of run through as other people's careers. This kind of, recruitment, you've kind of worked with HR tech, you advise recruitment firms as a fractional CMO on their marketing journey, and your current business, which is Strivin, which is like I'll try and describe a career management platform, kind of connectivity focus with mentoring in there. Where does the passion come from that keeps you coming back to other people's careers effectively?
I think I just find people fascinating, and I'm just like, I ask lots of questions. I'm super curious. But, and this is one that my coach will tell me off for because I'm not supposed to say it, but like, I've never been very smart. Like, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I was a very average student. I love learning. I just wasn't, I can't sit and write exams, but I've been pretty good with people. And I think just that was my thing when I came into the world of work. I realized I didn't need to be straight A's the whole time. I could just be really great with people, and it worked out just as well. So I think it's that. I think it's like, people are fascinating.
Is that something you realized early? You just thought, actually, this is me, or you reflect back and think, actually, that's become me.
I think it is a reflection piece that I think you kind of work out later. I think it was someone at some point kind of said something about working life, and I think I just realized I was a lot better at working life than I was at school. And I used to beat myself up so hard for not getting great grades the whole time. And I was like, oh, actually, that's really true. And then you have to sit and work out like what the differences were. And I think it's that you can do things your way, and it doesn't have to be like a tick in the box. And I think as well, just like the people that you've met along the way, and maybe that's part of living in different places as well and having to start over. You just get really good at talking to people.
It's like adaptability.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I think, for people who our listeners who kind of do, beat themselves up about, not getting, whether it's a particular role or they feel they haven't got the right kind of academic background, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, that you find what you're good at and back yourself.
I think so.
Yeah, good lesson. So let's look at striving. So I tried to describe it there. Give me your elevator pitch. Probably better to do it than I can.
I don't know. So we're kind of revamping what membership looks like. So if I start with the reason I started Strivin was how do you enable individuals to manage their own career? We're saying like, I've always worked in small businesses, really passionate about startup. The likelihood is you probably don't have someone in HR or L&D that's telling you, what to study or what to do or giving you advice. So you're very reliant on, or, hopeful that you have a great manager that cares about your career. And unfortunately, that isn't true in a lot of places. So how do you empower people to do that? And I think going back to what I was saying, like, I think most people have huge untapped potential and they just need to work out what the thing it is that kind of unleashes that for them. And I think most of the time, and maybe I'm biased, that's people. So Strivin was really around how can we give people a community of people, mentors, coaches, so they can excel at what they do and they can manage that entirely by themselves. It started off with this beautiful idea of I was going to build this tech platform with machine learning and it was going to be amazing. It's not. It's a terrible MVP. I'm not a product manager. The prototype is beautiful if anyone wants to see that, but the actual platform isn't so great. So we've kind of decided this year that we're really going to focus on that peer-to-peer connection. So we're doing a lot more around events and a lot more just really big focus on mentoring. And then hopefully all the other plans that we had will be, a year or two away.
The concept's very similar to how we work at AXR in terms of I think in recruitment, the transaction of placing someone in a role is how recruitment companies get paid, but it becomes everything. Whereas actually it's everything around that is more important because you can't place everybody. In fact, you can place a remarkably few number of people that you work with as a recruiter, but you can help them. And there's a massive need for understanding career journeys and how to make decisions, which is why we do the podcast, amongst other things. There's not a lot out there. Do you see, you might be lucky with a good manager, but that's just one person's point of view. The more perspectives you have, the better. So I love what you're doing. And I think it will go really well. But so who are your customers? Who you kind of, just explain a bit further. Who are you targeting? Yeah,
so we started off, obviously I wanted it to be for everyone because that's what everyone says. But we really started with HR, talent acquisition and people and culture at the start. Part of that, I think, was my background, obviously HR tech. I knew lots of people in that space and everyone was willing to give time. I think the other was, it was around COVID. So we were all seeing this huge shift in working life. But those were the people that were trying to work out how you still employ people when you're fully remote so all of a sudden, or how do you, onboard people. They were going through this huge shift in the world. So I think that felt like the best place to start. And then since then, we've opened up the platform to marketers and then more recently customer success and sales. Hypothesis when we started would be, it would be people between like 5 and 8 years in their career, because that's usually the point where you're a few years in and you're going like, oh God, is this it? Is this working life? Or you've stepped into leadership and you've gone like, I was not ready for this. This is not. But actually it's probably that, but also skewed a lot older. Because again, I think COVID really made us all really reevaluate work, and it's changed so much that actually I think it's been a lot broader than we expected.
So is that like a B2B and a B2C model in there?
So we originally were just B2C because we said, again, like if it was small businesses and individuals, we really wanted to make it a personal opt-in because I think personal development has to be driven by the person to get the most out of it. Like you can't just be given someone in HR tells you to go and do something or, somebody else tells you. But we are doing a lot more B2B at the moment. So we've just launched a Women in Leadership program that's come off the back of the book, which is B2B. And then we're also doing some team memberships and things now. That tends to be team managers. So sometimes you get a manager that really wants to do something for, they've got a small team of marketers rather than kind of, the entire business. It's more team related.
So your goals, have they changed, Laura, for it in terms of, in fact, it sounds like you've evolved a little bit in your thinking as you learn, as you go, but in terms of where you see it ultimately, what does that look like? So
I think the ultimate goal is still the same. I think it's probably just my first business and my naivety at the beginning of thinking we could do everything straight away.
Yeah.
When everyone tells you can't, you're like, no, I'll be different. It'll be fine. You can't. It costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time. So I think we're just trying to take it a little bit more bite-sized and really focusing on where we can deliver value today and then build the value up as we go.
Right. Okay. One of the hardest things is scalable, scalability, if that's a word, but taking an idea and kind of go, how does it not just me? How do I actually kind of create scalability that isn't just my time? And which is where tech and all the rest of it comes, but it feels like you kind of, is there still a bit of a dance between the two there, how you do it?
Yeah, it's a little bit 50-50. Like what we try and do is do everything manual to begin with so we can really understand how a process works, and then work out what we can automate within that process. So the whole startup, do things that don't scale to begin with. So you add tons of value, you get to really know your customers, and then work out which bits can be automated, where tech comes in and where you really need people. So yeah, the juggle is usually real.
Yeah, perfect. Well, wish you all the best with it. I think it's a great concept, something that we're very passionate about, and I love the way you're approaching it. I'm just curious as to how you manage. I said at the start, literally, you've got like all these hats that you wear and continue to, although you are so full time in Strivin now, but it feels like there's still another couple of hats you put on from time to time. So how do you manage? How do you cope? How do you kind of balance?
I think that depends what day of the week it is.
Yeah.
No, like I think I'm really lucky. Like there's a few people that work on Strivin part-time, so it's not just me anymore, which really helps. I think when it's just you can kind of rattle around in your own head a little bit. So super lucky from that point of view. I think the other thing is, like, I think when you're doing something you're passionate about, it isn't a 9 to 5. And it doesn't feel like work sometimes, and not in some douchey cliche way. When I have to sit and do finance models and stuff, like it definitely feels like work, and it definitely feels like something I don't want to do. But when it's mentoring or advising, like it's just stuff that you end up doing without knowing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just one of those. It's part of startup life, and sometimes the juggle is real and it destroys you. And other times you think this is the best thing in the world. I get to do everything. So I just think it's part of the journey.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I feel your pain, but it's when things go right, it's wonderful. And you get results, which is cool. So we're going to move on to your book. Now published author, which is quite exciting. The book is called Women in Leadership. Firstly, let's kind of commercially, where can you buy it?
So it's on Amazon.
Right.
So Kindle only at the moment, but hopefully print in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Also imminently coming to
I hope so.
To print. Yeah.
Well, it's been a journey. We're getting there.
Yeah. Good. And special pod discount?
Amazon don't let us do discount.
Oh,
I know. I can blame Amazon for this.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm only kidding. I think people don't make a lot of money out of books, so discounting is not the ideal.
No, and all the money does go to charity.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, well, let's look about your motivations behind it. Therefore, why did you choose to do it?
So every year, or I say every year, 3 years, right? For the last 3 years, we've done International Women's Week. So rather than this, like the cupcake situation that everyone's kind of over this year, it was how can we give value all week long? So we have women coaches that do sessions, and it's not just for women. It's just a really good excuse to put free education on for the week and get incredible speakers lined up. So every year, the first year it was 3, the next year it was 9, this year it was 11. So every year it's kind of got bigger and bigger. But I was in a bookshop probably November, December time, and there was this whole section around women creatives and just like all the amazing work they'd done. And I was like, oh, you never see things like that. I was like, oh, we should do a book about women in leadership, just thinking about International Women's Day. So I took it to the team, and they were just like, everyone's a bit like, I have so many stupid ideas, right? They're all so used to it. But like I say, everyone at the time was part-time. They're like, how are we going to publish a book and do everything else? It's like, it'll be fine. And we kind of got to the conclusion that if I could find 100 people, they'd let me do it. So I messaged 100 women I didn't know as my test. So I was like, all my friends will say yes, because they're all incredibly supportive women, right? If I go and ask people I don't know, at least it's a test of A, does anybody want this book? And B, do we have any hope of pulling it together before March? Trying to write a book in 3 months is not advised.
Yeah.
Anyway, 83 out of 100 people came back and said yes.
Really? Did you just mention them on LinkedIn? Or? Yeah.
I was just like, hey, I kind of did it where they needed to have, in my head, it was like 10 years experience, a whole different group of backgrounds. So it's like, we've got every kind of background in there. And not all of those 83 ended up submitting stories, but that was our test case of like, okay. And then I think the most shocking thing from that was the amount of women that came back and said, no one's ever asked me about my story. And like, they were incredible. Like everyone in the book is just in leadership roles, has been for years, amazing stories. And that's just kind of, I guess, what kept us going.
Yeah.
But trying to organize 100 women and 100 submissions and editing and everything else in 3 months, I would not recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the relentless optimism that comes through, and we can do it, and hit those deadlines, and might want to think about your ideas earlier next time.
Yeah, right.
But that's brilliant. So talk me through the format. So you interviewed 100 women. You approached 100, got 83 come back.
Yeah.
So there was definitely an appetite from people to kind of share their story, their journey. So what were you asking them? What stories were you trying to tell?
Yeah, so we asked everybody the same 21 questions, and we gave everybody, so instead of doing an interview format, because I did think originally, I was like, we could do 21 interviews. And I was like, I can't fit in 21 interviews in that time frame. So we gave everybody basically a Google Doc with 21 questions, and we asked them to write it. Now, some people came back with bullet points. Some people wrote 10,000 words. It was just like completely different. Wow. But the 21 questions basically went from, tell us about your career. So a bit kind of where we started. What are the lessons you learned along the way? When it comes to leadership, how did you get into leadership? How did you find it? Because I think, again, that's one of those things we don't talk about enough. I think we all want leadership roles because we think it's natural progression, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's other ways. And then things around just being female, so like work-life balance, and how does that impact you if you've got kids or if you work in a really male-dominated industry. So it was really just trying to get people to really dive into what shaped their leadership style, why they lead the way they do, and then any advice that they wish somebody had told them when they'd started out. So it was really the book we wanted to make sure so women felt seen and that the journey that we have can be different. But then also just like what's all the stuff that you wish you'd known or people had been honest about. And the idea was that it was just going to be a horribly honest book, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's actually overwhelmingly positive. And just that people want to share and people want you to succeed. And that's really where it came from. And then everyone's 21 questions got trimmed down to 1,000 words each. And that's what's in the book.
That's a lot of editing.
Yeah. It was fascinating though. Like we had one week where we had, because people would it would come back in dribs and drabs. So we had one week where every different day we had a different story. So the first day it was a lady that unfortunately had lost her husband very suddenly. The next day it was somebody that was a breast cancer survivor. So it was somebody that had survived a brain tumor.
Wow, traumatic.
Yeah, but if you look at them, I think the big thing was you look at these people and you think, oh my God, they're incredible. That person would never speak to me or that person would never offer advice. You really don't know what's going on behind closed doors or what shapes somebody. And I think it was the vulnerability and the honesty from everybody that really kind of kept us going as we were going through it.
Yeah. I interview a lot of people, Laura, probably half women, half men. That's the way of the world. For my job, and also on the podcast, we keep a gender mix, which is great. Honestly, women are more authentic. Just the way it is. They'll go to an authentic emotional place far faster than a man will, no matter what the format, what the interview is. Men will get there, mostly. But it's funny, and that sounds a big sweeping statement, but it's genuinely what I believe, having done this for a long, long time. Now I'm interested, when you started out, did you have you have like a proof of concept almost? It's like I think I know what's I'm going to uncover here. I think I know what the themes are going to be. I have a gut feeling what the story I'm telling. Did it end out that way?
I think so, yeah. I think we were saying before, so I was lucky enough to have done some podcasts before, so a little bit similar to you, talking about people's career journeys, but the same experience in terms of we ask the same questions in that. And one of the questions we ask is, what do you think is the key to your success? And every single man, apart from one, told me confidence was his key to success. Where all the women, when you talk to them about what holds them back, all of them said confidence. So I think we had these kind of hypotheses that we knew that there was these themes that would come out. I think what surprised me was just how honest people were. To your point, I think you expected that authenticity, but I think people went above and beyond in what they could share in terms of what held them back, in a way to make sure that it doesn't stop other people. And then the same afterwards, 100 women that don't know each other, most of them put their hands up to mentor, to catch up. We've got a little lunch group that we all go out. People want connection and people want to help each other. And I think as much as we expected some of that, it was overwhelming how many people kind of got involved and want to do more.
The women who come on this podcast, they are generally always very open to networking. And I reckon every single one has picked up mentees on the back of it. Yeah. And the men do too, but the women more so. And it's just interesting. I don't know why, but maybe that's that openness, that vulnerability, authenticity. But it's often generally from other future leaders, women future leaders reaching out to say, I'd love a role model. I'd love someone just to kind of talk about my journey and how I'm feeling. Having heard somebody, in a business leadership role, running a company or a big function, going, "Hey, it's not easy," and it kind of just breaks down that barrier, really, really nicely.
Yeah.
your perspective, was there anything that really surprised you? Anything you thought, oh, I didn't think that was going to come up?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that I probably found a little bit surprising, there was a question in there and I can't remember it exactly, but it was around your experience as a woman in the workplace.
Okay.
And I think when we asked that, it was really around just kind of like the nuances. But I think what came out of it was a lot that most of us have found really incredibly supportive men throughout our journey. And I don't think people talk about that enough. I think there is a bit of a gender divide sometimes. And it's just like,
right, us v them type thing.
Yeah, I think that can come across a little bit. And it was a lot more around finding really supportive men, which I thought was incredible. And a lot of people had better experiences than those that had negative experiences. That's a poorly constructed sentence, but we know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
And I think the overwhelming kind of consensus was that, yes, work is different, but you find your positives and you work with what you've got. And I don't mean that in some toxic positivity type way. It's just you find your people as you go through your career and you latch onto the people that want to support you and you ignore the negative voices.
Really interesting. Who are your readers?
Other than my friends. It was one of those when we published, because we were desperate to try and make the Amazon bestseller list. It was like WhatsApping everybody. I was like, go and buy the book right now. So I think...
you have in your mind a persona.
Yeah, totally. So we positioned it was existing or aspiring leaders. So I think if you're aspiring to be in a leadership position, a bit like saying you can't be what you can't see. So here's a bunch of advice from women that have been there, done that. You don't need to make the same mistakes we did. Here's some great advice. And then existing leaders, to your point, like we want to network, we want to know what other people are going. And sometimes you just need to know it's not just you that's struggling with that thing. So we kind of hope both, which sounds broad, but I think, most of the time when you've been in a leadership position, sometimes you do need a bit of a pep talk. And it's one of those days. And I think, but also on the flip side of it, people going into leadership probably need to have a slightly clearer idea of what they're going into and what the challenges will be.
And is it a sort of book that you would kind of read cover to cover, or you dive into it for moments of inspiration or pick up a story?
Yeah, we said in the cover that we kind of wanted it to be design your own adventure kind of thing. So, I read it cover to cover because I sat and read it afterwards to try and work out what else we could do with the content. Because there's so much there, to our point, like the people that wrote so much more than we put in the book. There's probably another book just in that. But I think it is one of those that you can just kind of pick up and put down, and you don't need to worry, or you don't need to overcommit. You don't need to sit for an hour. If you just want to read one story a day, go for it.
Great. Just in practical terms, I wonder if there's any budding authors out there thinking, "Oh, she's done it." You obviously set yourself in pretty tough deadlines. You saw an opportunity and went for it because presumably you wanted to launch for International Women's Week and so on. But how do you, in real terms, bring an idea to reality like that?
Yeah, I think I struggle a little bit. So I did it with 100 women, right? I didn't actually write anything other than the intro.
Yeah.
So I do feel like when it's like published author, you feel like a bit of a cheat when everybody else did the writing. But I think in terms of like, how do you do it? It was just a case of breaking it down. Like anything in life, like it feels like a huge task until you break it down into everything you do. And we had 3.5 months, which it was stressful. But it's like you break it down to 3.5 months, you do something every day. And I think I'm a big fan of atomic habits and like what's the 1% and that habit building. So it's like if you're thinking about writing a book, sit down for half an hour every day and write and see what you could do in half an hour. It'll just get better the more you do it.
Yeah. Would you do it again?
Yeah. And I said for about a week afterwards, anytime, because a lot of the women came to me and were like, we could do this. And everyone had these incredible ideas. And I was like, please don't talk to me about it right now. I was like, give me a little bit of time. And now I'm like, right, we've got an event series, we're doing a program. I reckon we'll do another book. Yeah, like there's too much there. And I've met too many incredible people for it not to be something ongoing. I'd definitely write a book again.
And it feels very aligned to what you're doing anyway. It's not this kind of crazy idea on the side that is kind of just satisfying you. Actually, it's about doing what you're trying to do anyway, which is build our understanding and knowledge around careers and giving people access in a different way to other leaders that they wouldn't get access to.
Yeah, it wasn't totally left field.
Yeah, I love it. We'll put the link to the book in the show notes. So you won't get a discount, guys, but seriously, it's jump in and you can get the Kindle version now, but the print version, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. And proceeds go to charity, which is?
The Australian Literature literacy and numeracy. I'll have to remember the exact time.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. Yeah, sorry.
Right. We'll put that in there as well so that we can come back to...
I've got the acronym in my head, but not the actual what it breaks down to.
All good. Now, I want to just kind of conclude a little bit on advice, because this is what you live and breathe by, Laura, which is you're picking up so much from other people. But if you were to kind of say, well, what's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given? What would that be?
I don't know about best single piece of career advice. I think I've had a lot of great advice throughout the year, but I think it probably just comes back to that. You can do more than you think you can. And I think going back to your point, like advice of how you break something down, like I think if you see something is really unachievable, just sit down and break it down. And what does it look like? And it's the small pieces. Like you don't go from nothing to running a marathon. There's a whole bunch of training that goes inside. And I think sometimes we need to look at our careers or pieces of work that way, because then you realize how achievable something is.
So it's not letting yourself be overwhelmed by the enormity of what might be in front of you, which can create inertia. Yeah.
Or just like telling yourself you can't do something because that one big thing seems too much, because actually that one big thing broken into 6 smaller things, those 6 small things are really, really achievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. A lot of people do get stuck, I think, in the moment, and prevents them from doing anything. Before they know, a year's gone by, 5 years gone by, they're doing the same thing. Yeah. Because to do otherwise just seems too big. But you can apply that to anything in life, couldn't you? With career or writing a book or launching a new business. Great. And do you, given what you've learned, and I guess, your business is about connecting people so they do get advice, but are you the sort of person who, proactively gives advice to others? Do you see yourself as a bit of a mentor as well?
I have got a couple of people that I mentor. I think I like to give advice when people ask for it. I'm not one of those.
I'm going to tell you what I see.
Right. But I think you get so much out of it. Say the other day, like I tend to have a lot of coffees. I'm sure you do the same, right? And you do end up just kind of, you take something away from every single one of those conversations, whether it's direct advice or you're just talking through a problem. Like I think there's something to be learned in kind of every interaction that we have.
Yeah. Great. Agree. It's a great mindset to have. And so what about you? Where do you go next? How many more hats do you wear? We talked about there's probably another book in you, maybe loads more, who knows? But, talk us through the future.
Yeah. So I think for now we're looking at revamping Strivin memberships. That's the next couple of months that'll keep us busy. And then we're doing a lot more focus on community and peer-to-peer connection this year. So working on some sponsors to bring that to life. So for the next 12 months, it's really just focusing on that and that, how we create more connection for people. And then we'll work out what's from there. I'm trying not to get too carried away with kind of where we want to take it and where we want to end up, because I think that's where I fell over the first time. And it's just, again, how do we keep adding value, and then how do we keep growing on that and break it down?
One step at a time.
Yeah.
So if on the sponsor side, just interested, because we lots of different people listen to this, lots of different who work in lots of different types of companies. If someone's thinking, I like what you're doing, you want to call? Do you want someone to pick up the phone and say, I can help?
I always say I always take the coffee, no matter who it is. It was one of those probably pieces of advice I got early on in my career. So yeah, if anyone wants to chat, absolutely. Yeah.
So what does the sponsor look like to you?
So it depends really. And that's, so we're working with some HR tech sponsors who help bring a lot of our events together. And they're just, again, kind of newer brands into the APAC market, but they really believe in brand and community, and they're very values aligned. And then from the Women in Leadership book, we're actually working with a couple of big companies to try and bring a new Women in Leadership program together. So how do we get more women into tech? So really it depends on what program of work we're working on, but really it's around values alignment and people that believe in community.
Okay. Fantastic, Laura. Great conversation. A huge admirer of what you're doing. You take on a lot, but I understand how you can do that. Just the way you approach it, very pragmatic, very level-headed, never in awe of the enormity of it. I think that kind of approach there's so much you can take from that. And I think for people listening to the pod, often the bigger things get missed, and they lose track of their long-term goals because they don't want to be almost over-ambitious. But I think you can be ambitious in a really practical way, which is what I think you've shown, which is superb. Now, we invest all of our energy at AXR into helping you guys, our listeners and our beautiful candidates and clients, be equipped to understand your career pathways. And the next program we've got is called our How-To series. So it'll be out in podcast form soon. We trialed the first one recently, and the downloads were actually off the charts. It was how to work with a recruiter, which I'm not sure if it says about the quality of the podcast or just about how confusing it is to work with us as recruiters. But anyway, it was a really popular pod. So the team at AXR, Andrew, Amelia, Ben and Christina in the sales and marketing side, and all the finance guys too, and our finance recruiters have been busy recording a bunch more how to pivot your career, how to manage a job offer, how to build a great resume, how to resign with confidence, all these little practical tips, 10, 15 minutes on the detail how to get things right. So that's coming your way soon, guys. We're really keen to kind of give you everything you need to really understand and make good decisions. So once again, thank you, Laura. And for me, Mike Dickson, we'll be back soon for another pod to help your future in sales and marketing.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.